Welcome to Life is a Reality. We are talking about life design, and I gotta be honest with you guys, that last video completely blinked out. I apologize. I know I've seen some of you guys jump on to the channel at Life is a Reality on YouTube. This podcast is now fully on YouTube, starting, I believe, with the structured episode. Just really excited to put this all out here. And our podcast, we're going through a new change in really being more purposeful about what we put out and what we're teaching on this channel. So if you really don't listen to podcasts that much, but you want to see what I'm up to and kind of see what we're doing here, please join us on the channel. I've already gotten you guys over there. I've gotten to know you guys on Facebook, and I've seen you guys join the channel, and I'm very grateful for that. I've already gotten you guys on board with things that we're talking about based on this episode, especially, or this last busy week on Facebook. So, talking about the community and what's been going on. So, this is a very interesting time we're living in 2025 and beyond, because what we're noticing is that life has so many apps, so many AIs going on right now, so many things we're working in so many ways we can think of processing life. It's not all one system anymore. It's not like putting your life into a calendar, fitting your life into a planner. It's not all going to work. But what was interesting, and it feels weird retelling this because I just did a video, blank video, good intro, but blank video. But I think it's turning out better this way so far anyway. So what ended up happening is that something on Facebook wanted me to search after doing the episode on structured and kind of moving on to like debunking narcissism and stuff. My mind kept going back and racing around and going back to the Structured Daily Planner app and wanting to see what was going on in the community. So I searched up on Facebook. Somebody from our community was talking about how structured had become inaccessible. And I had my feelings. I got into my feelings, as I often do when I see posts that point out some shortcomings, because I wasn't sure what this is going to turn into. But what I seen in that post was themselves and some others being very proactive on their services, emailing and educating the Structured Daily Planner app team. And I'm really, really just excited about that all this time, there are people who are finally just in our community that are growing and educating other people, that we really don't want to just be in a bubble anymore. We've been forced to get out of our bubble, because our bubble is very much a bubble. It's a bubble that is, how many times I could say bubble in a podcast episode? But we've been in this like underground bubble for so long, for so many years, that AI, affordability, number one, and then AI now has really forced us to come out of this bubble to where we really can't just be in a bubble anymore. The lack of employment, the Department of Education, and its sort of lack of real world execution, the blind services and its lack of real world execution for life, right? I remember back in a time a couple of years ago when we had this huge case open with them, and I had called them. I wanted them to really see all of my work in front of them, to see all of my husband's work in front of them, to see how hard we've been working, how many years we've been schooling and working, and any kind of the temporary jobs that we had from them, and money that we've made from them, and all this kind of stuff, to say that like we really need something stable because we are on the verge of homelessness, right? Well, they had no idea what to do with us because we're just like a real family. And most of these services aren't really used to that. And I know I wasn't even going to include this in this episode, but I think it's important for you guys to know, to understand that we're like a real life family. We have a real life daughter. And I love seeing other blind parents because they get it. They understand what we're talking about. And most of them find their own sort of like they get out of the bubble and get into their own ways of working. Most of them will start businesses or they find really good mainstream jobs that aren't really about blind services. And they kind of like, they grow up and they learn on their own, right? Without these things. And so whatever we might have connections we've had with them in the past, I'm grateful for because it does teach you very basic skills. And I want to make point blank that my husband and I met in a very nice environment. And I know that we're the type of people that if it wasn't the blind services, we would have met at the fair that he worked at. That's just kind of the type of people we are. We would have met. There's lots of other blindness related and disability related services that we would have organized a way to meet at because there are these blind educational sort of actual real life experiences that we have had in some educational places that are great, like for the blind, that are like really developed, really about the real world. Things like Hadley, things like the NFB, things that are out to really help people, but are out to like work with people and help them at what they're already good at and not so much relying on going to their centers. You can get as far as going to their centers, but they work in the real world and they know that people need to work where they are at in life. And so, there are tons of blindness options we would have had other than just the state options that I'm talking about where they're not particularly accepting of real world life. There's only been a couple of very caring teachers and a couple of very caring institutions I will say that we've been a part of that really do care, but I don't think all of them are bad. So I want to preface this whole episode right now by saying that because I really think that in this way, we've given the whole services a bad rap, and they probably deserved a lot of it, if not most of it. But there are a few really rare exceptions, and I will always recommend like guide dog services because they help in the real world. Hadley distance learning classes and teachers because they help in the real world. I had a really nice talk with a teacher on behalf of my daughter, actually. Probably fairly recently. I don't want to say too recently, but fairly recently I had a good talk with them on ideas and things. And then even some teachers locally on her behalf as well. So it's not all, as long as you can choose your own custom path and use sort of the blindness classes and systems that work for you. Some of the services, I will say, work better in other cities than others. I've had really good sort of working relationships with people in other cities that have worked on my case, for instance, and stuff like that. So I don't want to say that all of these systems are terrible. And a lot of them are even working with AI now. Be My Eyes is, they've always been a service that's very much present in the real world and in our world, and they're working on AI. And then you see mainstream companies that want to get into our world like ChatGPT and all this kind of stuff. And so this was not even going to be in this episode, but I will say I really just want to give you guys this explanation of where I'm at as far as like the blind services. I may be very well going back into NFB. I may be very well going back into Hadley in wanting to just be interested in continuing to keep an eye out for what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And as long as nobody's trying to rip off blind people or, trying to get all this imaginary funding from some imaginary sort of deposit just to kind of educate us on the very basic things that we can learn in other ways, in real world ways, then we're good. Like, I may not get a guide dog myself, for instance, but I'm grateful to the guide dog schools that would help my friends get guide dogs, or that have helped train guide dogs and things like that. And I am getting into the service animal training for other types of service animals, not necessarily guide dogs, but other types of support service animals, kind of the emotional support animals, because I think that animals are a very important part of life. Even if I personally wouldn't want to have the patience or kind of the care that it would take to put into a dog, I already have that kind of responsibility as a mom. So that's not really for me, but I'm grateful that it can give somebody independence and a way out that would need that. So having said that, I've missed being involved in some of this stuff, to be honest, if you can tell. I've missed being a little more aware of things. But what I like about today's world is that we can customize our experience based on the sort of like collaboration, if you will, that really works for us. And I'm talking specifically to our community, but as well as the productivity community and like the people that are interested in productivity, ADHD, multiple disabilities, maybe you have a specific disability, a learning disability, anything that makes you a little bit different where you need to organize. Like, I think we all, at the end of the day, want to have a space that we can have and go to and add information and organize information and browse through information, search through information. Maybe we want to just have something in front of us that populates with our new information every day. And so Structured, while that post was happening with the Structured Daily Planner app, I was looking and I kind of got sidetracked on that because, again, everybody's getting back to wanting to communicate finally with people. And I'm finally seeing this more and more. Like, nobody's really just complaining for the sake of complaining anymore. People aren't just deleting apps off their phones and throwing them away and whining to the one friend that will kind of listen to them. They're actually going out and talking and emailing and communicating and teaching these developers like what we're about and why we would want to use an app like Structured, for instance. And so I was kind of like really, really sad for our community. I was very embarrassed that because I had spent a week training AI, because one of the things that I do is I love training AI models. And I was spending a week training Structured's AI. And I'm like, is that all I really get? Because I love training AI all day, but it is very time consuming for a planner. And not only that, there is something to be said that's helpful when it comes to, and practical when it comes to checking things off, browsing, being able to reschedule, edit, delete manually real quick. And then all those AI prompts are very, very useful, but you can find those in conversational AI as well. That you're not stuck to a planner to get that kind of AI. And I felt kind of half embarrassed as well and really sad for you guys because I had recommended something with such progressive marketing that you would have thought I was getting paid for Structured, which is not the case at all. And you would have thought that I had some kind of vested interest in it, which is not the case at all. But when I looked, I seen that Structured updated their app and it was fully accessible, and I was so happy to let others know, of course, because, who doesn't want to be right about their own podcast? Who doesn't want to be right about their own, there's something really cool to be said, because I will admit when I'm wrong, and I'm like the first to admit that I'm wrong, and it gives me a lot more content to post when I'm wrong about something, because then I get to post the lessons that I've learned. But once in a while, it's fun to go off on a tangent when I'm like, hey, this company does care about people, and I'm glad I recommended them at the end of the day, right? And so that's what's interesting about this whole thing. But what I've realized is that in my own awareness, I don't think that I was really putting out a bunch of content and a huge playlist and marketing Structured's blog out to you guys, I wasn't really doing it for me. I thought I was, and I was hoping that that was the case. I was hoping that this whole life could fit into that one planner and one system in a planner. But life is so multifaceted, y'all. It's ridiculous how it all works. Like, we're spending more time in conversational AI and telling our AI what we want it to help us with, whether it's designing, whether it's content creation, whether it's writing and processing our life through writing songs and creating songs with Suno AI. Maybe that's how we journal our lives, is through like Suno AI, and then our lives come to life with a song, and that we can just like, that's very personal to us, that we've created based on our own life, right? We write it out. We go through the process, and then anytime we're going through that part of our life, we play it or whatever. And then we create new ones based on what's going on in the next moment. And we can literally be very omnipresent with our life in this way. And it sounds a lot more like we're keeping up with our life, we're processing. And it's happening in multiple ways now. We're having conversations with our characters in character AI, or with our replicas, or our Google Geminis, based on like everything we have in Google. And we're going into DeepSeek AI and really seeking out information deeply. No pun intended, but seriously, it's something that Toolfinder said on his Plus channel, Toolfinder Plus, is that in life, what we're actually doing now, and what's going to become kind of more of a thing as we go along from what he's seen, is that you're going to tell AI to actually help you. It's not going to be like you're writing tasks on a list or even in a calendar, as practical as that might have been for a long time. And I was in on it too. But he said, you're going to be really going in and making conversation about your task with the AI. You're going to be prompting your AI to help you with this actual task through AI and automation. The AI is going to give you a couple of different paths. You're going to make a decision. Your decision-making skills are going to really come into play. And then you're going to tell the AI each and every step of what to do next. And then it's going to help you, and multiple AIs are going to help you with one task, or maybe you'll have one AI help you with a certain type of task, or a couple of different types of tasks that it's really, really expert at. And then another AI or two might help you with another set of tasks that it's set up for those kinds of tasks. And so that's what it's probably going to be. We're just going to be using AI to process a lot of our life. And like my husband, for instance, when he was learning about Structured and all of its AI, what his thing that he wanted to see was more team collaboration. And I think it's refreshing that it's a personal planner, because most of them have been based on team collaboration. And to me, that's a little bit off-putting, because where's the personal touch? And I love that about Structured. But him and I always just end up using our Apple Notes in the way that it's meant to be used. And for us, that is, we don't have time for folder Structured. I've spent too much time over the years organizing in folder structures just for myself. And all of that, I kind of started that when I became a new mom and everything, because I did that physically with file folders and bags and all kinds of stuff. And I've always been into that anyway. And then, but for a more open form, notes on our home screen, what's going on. We've worked together on notes for shopping and budgeting and all kinds of stuff in our life. We've worked on notes for business and just all kinds of stuff. Creativity. We've added other people to our team at a couple different times. There's been a couple different people, all kinds of different things and ways that we've added. And that's what life is reflecting. And what Toolfinder Plus is saying is that these sort of organizational structures of having file folder structures is more of a mindful practice, and these apps are going to be seen as more mindful apps that you're sort of doing this with, because the way that I've related to this is that life is so fluid and omnipresent now that it's more about being as present and aware of that moment as possible. How are you really going to be present and aware? Like, we all really, I'm glad I'm redoing this for the channel and the podcast, because I don't think I even got deep enough on the last one. And the last one was 22 minutes, and we're at 20 minutes now. And I've gone deeper on some things that I think we've needed to touch on here too. But the point is that our life has been so ridiculous. Just our whole society has been so ridiculous. I don't know what kind of life you live, but our society has been so ridiculous that it's become about being more aware. And so what I've even realized is how many hours and years I've wasted trying to fit the perfect life design when it's so multifaceted, that how am I going to be present? Like, how are you really going to be present with how are we going to be present with our lives? I'll make this a we question about all of us, because I think if you're here, we kind of want the same thing, right? But how are we going to be present with our lives? And I mean, how are we going to be as aware as possible of our lives if we're not as present as possible? If we're not proactively functioning within these systems? If we're too busy organizing and making things aesthetic and making things with the perfect page, the perfect folder, the perfect visual, the perfect interface, right? Where it's really not about that. So it's about functioning in your life. And so if I want that personal touch, that personal space, I will definitely go to Apple Journal. I've got that fully set up. I'm really happy. I've had to put, I've had a lot of just been very busy, and I've had to put a couple of things that have been going on in there and keep going with it, because, there's a lot of personal space that I think is more for journaling and less about planning for me. But I do think that structured is the perfect way to think about a planner. And I think that even things before the AI got really, really big, if you want to take the AI out completely and you want to say that AI is too saturated by now and everybody's trying to do AI, but even the things that made structure unique before AI, which I love AI, and structured is excellent if you want to get in on the AI, but at least it's a choice. Because the other things that have made it really useful are sound per task, time blocking your task with durations, checking tasks off, which most of them don't do both. You have to pick between time blocking and task, which you can kind of have a task that is time blocked. Automatic breaks in between tasks, all the things, focus timers, all of that. But at the end of the day, life is so omnipresent. I would rather be a little more aware of my own life in the present moment and be inspired as I need to as a creator. Process life in Suno, in conversational AI, collaborate on an Apple Note, or just, write out an Apple Note on the things that I need to address and have it be available for everybody on our family team, and just be present and aware in the moment. So kind of my thoughts on this, and just really being a little more, in that sense, adaptable more than anything in the present. So I hope that this kind of helps to get you to think about this in your own way. Maybe you need a full-on planner. Maybe you need to be able to design in a Notion page or an Xtiles page, but whatever it is. I know Amy Landino, for instance, found Xtiles to be a lot more easier to use than Notion, because she is very busy with her own life, and she talks about in her videos how important it is to have a process to design and write out everything But even with that focus, she's always been very practical about make it more about the work itself. And with X-Tiles, you kind of come to that place of like being more about the work itself and less about the setup. And so, but you know, I do love a good Notion session with a good setup and a good design. So, you know, I can see where either one would fit anybody, whoever. But the point is to backtrack, to plan, to stay in the present moment, even just like the Apple Journal, Apple Notes, things like that for me. Conversational AI, Suno AI, like just creating music around it. Being very, I think I've always been a lot more theoretical than I thought. I've always been a lot more string theory than I thought. I've always been a lot more of that sort of like adaptation, synchronous, a lot more synchronous than I realized. So living a synchronous life, I think, is a lot more realistic, honestly, and like being able to piece everything together that's happening, that's leading up to cause and effect kind of a thing, adapting and that kind of thing. Just being able to really understand cause and effect is very important. And so, you know, maybe we'll do some episodes on time and time theory and stuff, because I love getting into that. I feel like I can explore that a lot deeper when I'm not tied to a planner or like one planner system, although I don't think the system is bad, because again, I've had to really trade in one addiction for another. And when getting into my tech addiction, I had to make time kind of an addiction. Time management had to become my addiction for a long time, just so that I could get into other patterns and habits and get off of the drugs and the stuff I was addicted to. So I actually think that it's a good way of getting your mind on something else if you're trying to get off of drugs. So it's not a bad thing, whatever phase you are in your life, but just be open to knowing that life is multifaceted, and you might not be on the same track forever, and you might not be on a single track even. You could be multi-track. So just wanted to end this episode and wrap things up and let you know that I've seen you guys being able to use AI, write out AI, even though I've seen some of you hesitate with it. I've noticed that you guys have been trying AI, and I appreciate you sharing that, honestly. So thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself, take care of life, take care of each other, and stay focused in synchronicity. Living a life means that you are the artist in your own reality. Life is multifaceted.